Marcus Hale's shovel bit into the stubborn Kansas dirt, throwing up clumps of soil under the dim glow of a dying sun. His hands were blistered, raw, but he kept digging because there was no one else left to do it. The air smelled of smoke and ash, reminders of the burning cities to the east. In the distance, streaks of alien fire still burned like silent scars across the horizon. But here, in what had once been his family's farm, the world was quiet, except for the sound of metal scraping stone and his own harsh breathing. At his feet lay the still form of Rex, his old German shepherd. The dog had survived wars, evacuations, starvation, and the endless chaos of alien raids. Rex had been Marcus's shadow through it all, but even shadows couldn't last forever. Old age had claimed him, not the invaders. That felt crueler somehow. Marcus would have preferred the dog to fall in battle, snarling at the teeth of the Cathar. Instead, Rex simply hadn't woken that morning. The man's throat was tight, but no tears came. Tears had dried years ago after the first invasion. Now, grief was just another weight pressing down on his spine. He lowered the body gently into the shallow pit, hands trembling. Rex's graying muzzle rested against the soil, peaceful. Marcus whispered the only words he could manage. "Rest now, boy." He pushed earth over the body, shovel after shovel. Each thud echoed in the silence. But then, the silence broke. The ground shivered beneath his boots. A vibration, faint at first, like the hum of buried machinery, then stronger, until the dirt itself rippled as though alive. Marcus froze, clutching the shovel handle so tightly his knuckles whitened. This wasn't an earthquake. He'd felt those before when alien orbital strikes shook entire cities. This was different. The movement came from the grave itself. Then came the sound. A hiss, not through the air, but inside his skull. A whisper crawling like venom along his spine. "The earth is fed." Marcus staggered back, staring at the dirt he had just laid over Rex. The voice was not one, but many, overlapping, hissing in chorus like serpents. The blood oath is complete. The soil cracked. Black roots erupted from the grave, twisting upward, writhing like living tendrils. They weren't natural. Their surface shimmered, slick as oil, glinting with faint inner fire. They wrapped around each other, twisting tighter and tighter until they formed a crown, thorny, jagged, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. Marcus's first instinct was to run. Every muscle screamed at him to flee, but his feet refused to obey. His eyes locked on the crown as though invisible chains tethered him in place. The hissing grew sharper. Wear the crown, or be next, his heart thundered. Sweat poured down his back. He wanted to scream that he was no king, no ruler, just a farmer who had buried his last friend. But something older, deeper than his will, drove his hand forward. His fingertips brushed the black thorns. Pain never came. Instead, fire poured into him. Not flame, not heat, but raw force, filling his veins with burning light. His breath caught in his throat as his vision exploded outward, beyond the farm, beyond Earth. Stars filled his mind's eye, billions at once. He saw empires rise and collapse, species crowned and devoured, planets bound in chains of soil and blood. He gasped as images ripped through him, thrones carved from bone, worlds turned to ash, rulers crowned not in celebration, but in sacrifice. A curse as old as time itself. The voice returned, colder, sharper, sealing his fate. Emperor of Earth, you have been chosen. The crown tightened on his skull, roots sinking into flesh without breaking skin. His eyes blazed gold, his pulse hammered like war drums. The farm around him blurred, replaced by visions of reptilian ships circling Earth, wings of fire spreading across the sky. He fell to his knees, shovel clattering to the ground. Rex's grave was silent again. The crown pulsed. The crown did not rest on Marcus's head like jewelry. It dug into him, burrowing like roots into soil, threading themselves through the folds of his mind. His breath came ragged, his vision blurred, and for a heartbeat he thought he might collapse. Then it stabilized, as though something vast and ancient had settled into place. The world sharpened around him. He no longer merely saw the ruined farmhouse and barren fields, he felt them. Every grain of dirt, every blade of grass, every crawling insect thrummed in his senses. Earth's pulse beat in time with his own. Then the invasion roared in his mind. Ships in orbit shifted, maneuvering with alien precision. Marcus saw them as clearly as if he stood in their cold metal halls. The Scythar, scaled predators with long jaws and wings that folded like razors, were restless. They had felt the crown's reawakening. Their voices, harsh and furious, whispered across the void, "Another has taken the throne! Crush him before he binds the planet." Marcus staggered backward, clutching at his head, but there was no escaping the connection. He understood now. Earth had once had a ruler, someone bound to its life force, but that ruler was gone. The Scythar had timed their invasion to strike when the planet was leaderless. He was the replacement, a farmer with dirt under his nails, chosen not by worth but by circumstance. Flashes struck him, memories not his own. The last emperor of Earth dying under alien claws. 1,000 years of silence. Now his own dog's burial had reawakened the covenant. The rumble of engines cut through the night. Marcus whipped his head toward the horizon just as fire lit up the fields. Alien dropships screamed from the sky, their undersides glowing red-hot. The ground shook as they landed, sending dirt flying. The hatches split open with a hiss. Tall, armored figures poured out, Scythar soldiers, their scales polished to a metallic sheen, carrying shock rifles that buzzed with lethal energy. Their jaws snapped as they advanced, their eyes locked on him. Marcus's instincts screamed to run. He was one man with no weapon, but the crown pulsed, and something deeper took over. The soil around him stirred. His hands rose without his command. The ground beneath the Scythar cracked, splitting apart like an opening maw. Jagged pillars of stone shot upward with explosive force, impaling the first squad in a spray of alien ichor. Their screams cut the night as their bodies thrashed against the spikes before going still. Marcus fell to his knees, horrified at what he'd done. He wasn't a killer, not like this. But even as guilt twisted in his gut, the crown hissed its cold logic, rule or die. Lead or Earth falls. The surviving Scyther opened fire. Plasma bolts scorched the ground, burning holes through the farmhouse remains. Marcus threw up his hands instinctively. The soil surged, forming a wall of stone that caught the blasts, glowing white-hot before cooling again. More roots writhed up from the earth at his command. They lashed forward, wrapping around soldiers' throats, snapping bones with sickening cracks. Marcus shouted, part battle cry, part denial of what he was becoming. In the aftermath, silence fell again. Smoking bodies littered the field, their armor cracked, their weapons useless. Marcus gasped for air, trembling from the effort. His hands dripped with mud and blood, though he wasn't sure which was his. He looked at the farmhouse, what was left of it. His father's barn, the last remnant of his old life, was now a smoking ruin. His quiet farm had become a battlefield, his dog's grave the birthplace of a war. From the crown came whispers, faint, insistent. He caught fragments, maps of Earth, images of cities under siege, signals from human fleets on the run. The crown wasn't just binding him to the ground, it was tying him into humanity's fate. He could see where the aliens would strike next. He could feel their hunger as though it were a storm pressing down on him. Marcus collapsed against the dirt, every muscle shaking. The weight of what he carried was unbearable. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a leader. But the crown didn't care. It didn't choose by will. It chose by blood spilled into the earth. In the distance, alien war cries echoed. More ships were coming. The invasion had noticed him. Marcus dragged himself to his feet. His gaze fell on the crown's thorny roots pulsing faintly against his temples. He didn't want this, but he couldn't undo it. And now, with fire already spreading through the night sky, he knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. If he didn't rise, if he didn't fight, the Scythar would not just bury him, they would bury Earth itself. So he clenched his fists, lifted his head to the stars, and whispered through clenched teeth, "Then come and take it!" Marcus Hale had never commanded more than a harvest season, yet within days, word of him spread like wildfire across a ruined planet. Survivors whispered of the earthbound king, a man who called storms, cracked the ground open, and tore alien warbands apart with his bare hands. Rumors swelled with each retelling. Some believed he was chosen by God. Others swore he had made a deal with devils. No matter what name they gave him, the truth remained. Humans finally had a weapon that frightened the invaders. For years, Earth's resistance had been scattered. Small cells, hidden bunkers, ragged militias striking and vanishing before the overwhelming alien armies could crush them. But the Scythar weren't fighting rebels anymore. They were fighting a planet. When Marcus walked through the ruins of Wichita, the streets seemed to come alive. Survivors crawled out from hiding places to follow him. Soldiers with rifles down to their last clips stood straighter when they saw him. Children, hollow-eyed and hungry, reached out to touch his sleeve as if hoping some of his strength would pass into them. He didn't feel like a leader. He felt like an imposter. But he kept moving forward because their eyes told him they had no one else. It wasn't long before the remnants of the official military came to find him. A battered Corvette dropped into the city on smoking engines. Its hull was scarred with plasma burns, its emblem of the United Earth Navy nearly blasted away. From its hold stepped Commander Lena Ortiz. She was tall, lean, with a soldier's posture and a face marked by fatigue and battle scars. Her uniform hung loose, patched so many times it was more cloth than regulation. Yet her eyes were sharp, calculating, unyielding. She had once commanded a fleet of 100 ships. Now she had 2. She studied Marcus with the kind of look that could slice through armor. He half expected her to scoff at the crown rooted into his skull. Instead, she dropped to one knee. Her soldiers followed. "You are Emperor of Earth now," she said. Her voice carried more steel than reverence. "And if we don't fight under you, we won't last the month." The word emperor made Marcus's stomach turn, but he said nothing. The crown pulsed faintly, as though agreeing with her. The next days blurred into planning and bloodshed. Ortiz's ships carried refugees and scavenged supplies, but little else. Still, with Marcus bound to the planet, they fought differently. Alien patrols expecting easy prey instead faced ambushes guided by his foresight. He could sense enemy landings miles away, predict the ground they would use, and direct humans into positions that turned slaughter into victory. In one battle, when the Scythar unleashed firebombs on a refugee camp, Marcus struck the dirt with both fists. The ground split into a canyon, swallowing the bombs before they reached the people. In another, he called lightning from a storm he hadn't known was there until he needed it. White bolts lanced down, frying alien war beasts in their armor. But each time he used the crown, something in him drained. His nose bled. His muscles cramped. Sometimes he caught his reflection in broken glass and saw golden light burning in his eyes, brighter than before. He feared what would happen if the crown took more than blood, if it took his mind. The people didn't see that weakness. They only saw hope. Ortiz kept pressing him to act faster. "The Scythar won't stop. Their fleets are massing in orbit. Every day we waste, they dig in deeper." She tapped a cracked data pad showing falling cities. "You're not just one man anymore, Marcus. You're Earth's warhead," Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to scream that he never asked for this. But the crown throbbed with agreement. And when he closed his eyes, he saw burning cities begging for his hand to rise. The breaking point came when a survivor convoy stumbled into camp, 1,000 people from St. Louis, haggard and starved. They'd marched across 2 states on foot, losing half their number to alien raids. Yet when they reached Marcus, they didn't collapse. They knelt. "Lead us," the eldest among them said. "Make the ground fight for us," Marcus's heart clenched. These weren't soldiers. They were families, the last fragments of humanity's soul. If he didn't lead them, they'd be dust within a week. That night, under the fractured glow of orbiting alien warships, Marcus stood before thousands of survivors and soldiers. His voice shook at first, but then grew steady, amplified by the crown's strange presence. "I'm no king. I'm no general. I was just a farmer trying to bury my dog. But Earth chose me, and now it's choosing all of you. This planet isn't dead yet, and if we fight together, neither are we." The ground trembled under his words, not from anger, but from unity. The survivors roared. Soldiers slammed weapons together. And for the first time since the invasion, Earth felt alive with defiance. But above them, in the blackness of space, the Scythar commanders hissed in fury. Their prey had teeth again. The war was no longer about conquest. It was about who would rule the earth, alien predators, or the reluctant farmer who had become its emperor. The war moved upward. For months the fighting had been on Earth's surface, cities burning, forests turned into battlegrounds, human resistance ambushing ground patrols. But now the fight shifted into orbit, where the real war would be decided. If the Cathar dominated the skies, the planet would be stripped bare, its survivors reduced to ash. Marcus stood on the command deck of the ISS Aegis, a battle cruiser that had once been the pride of Earth's navy. Now its hull was scarred, patched with scavenged plating, lights flickering from old damage. Yet to Marcus it felt like a throne room. The crown pulsed faintly against his skull, connecting him not only to the soil of Earth but to the void beyond. When he closed his eyes, he could feel the stars. The Cathar fleet hung above Earth like vultures, sleek, curved dreadnoughts the size of cities, their hulls bristling with biomechanical growths that pulsed like living tissue. Their wings of steel stretched wide, blotting out starlight. Commander Ortiz stood beside Marcus, her face a mask of determination. This is it. They're bringing the harvesters. If they reach the oceans, they'll boil the planet dry. On the tactical display, 3 colossal dreadnoughts unfolded like monstrous flowers, each one opening bays that glowed with a red, pulsing hunger. They weren't just warships. They were planet eaters. The human fleet gathered what little strength it had. A few dozen ships, all scarred and mismatched, moved into formation. Old destroyers that should have been retired decades ago, orbital defense craft dragged out of storage, and even civilian transports jury-rigged with stolen weapons. None of it should have been enough. But they had Marcus. As the Cathar dreadnoughts began their descent, Marcus raised a hand. He felt Earth's fury waiting below and space's silence above. He reached for both. The sun answered. A solar flare erupted, brighter than expected, arcing across space. It struck the nearest dreadnought's shields, frying its comms and blinding its scanners. Human ships dove in, missiles streaking like meteors. The alien ship reeled as explosions ripped across its hull. "Direct hit!" Ortiz shouted. The bridge roared with human voices, but Marcus wasn't celebrating. He felt the strain like a knife in his chest. The Crown demanded more. The other 2 dreadnoughts responded, unleashing swarms. Thousands of smaller craft, half ship, half beast, spilled into the void. They moved like schools of piranhas, weaving and tearing into human formations. Laser fire lit space in white streaks. Entire destroyers vanished in bursts of fire. Marcus gritted his teeth. He extended his will outward further than he'd ever dared. His mind reached past Earth, past the moon, until he touched something vast and silent, the asteroid belt. Rocks, ice, metal, debris that had drifted for eons. "Move," he whispered, and the belt stirred. Millions of stones shifted course, dragged by forces no human could see. They became a storm of jagged iron and fire, hurling toward the Cathar fleet. The dreadnoughts' shields flared as asteroids slammed into them. One ship buckled under the onslaught, its hull breaking open like a cracked egg. The void filled with alien fire as its core detonated. Cheers erupted across the Aegis, but Marcus staggered, blood pouring from his nose. His hands shook violently, golden light blazing from his eyes. Ortiz grabbed his shoulder. "You're bleeding out, Marcus. Stop before it kills you." He shook his head. "If I stop, we're done." The Cathar pressed harder. Their swarms cut through 2 more human ships, tearing them apart like vultures stripping bone. The dreadnoughts rotated, their harvester beams charging, hungry to rip the oceans from Earth's surface. "Focus fire!" Ortiz barked. Human warships hurled everything they had. Torpedoes, railgun slugs, hacked-together plasma cannons. Explosions riddled one dreadnought, but its beams kept charging. Marcus's vision blurred, but he reached deeper. His voice trembled. Not human anymore, but resonant with the Earth's core. He summoned the storms below, hurricanes spinning faster than nature intended, lightning striking into orbit itself. Bolts lanced through the swarms, frying alien craft by the hundreds. The battlefield became chaos. Asteroids burning, storms raging, ships colliding in desperate fury. For the first time, the Scythar faltered. But the price was steep. Half the human fleet was gone, torn apart in the onslaught. Survivors screamed over comms, begging for orders, for hope. Marcus forced himself to his feet, staring at the last dreadnought bearing down on Earth. Its hull glowed with energy as the harvester beam prepared to fire. He could feel the crown searing his skull, rooting deeper. His voice came out in a whisper, more to the planet than to anyone else. Not today. With the last of his strength, he willed the asteroids into one final strike. A mountain-sized rock slammed into the dreadnought head-on, shattering it in a burst of fire visible even from Earth's surface. The fleet broke. The Scythar swarm scattered. For the first time, Earth had won a battle in space. Marcus collapsed to his knees on the deck, barely conscious. Ortiz caught him before he hit the floor. His eyes glowed faint gold even as they fluttered closed. "We're still here," she whispered fiercely. "And we'll keep fighting." But she looked at the crown, at the veins of golden light spreading along his temples, and knew every victory was burning him away piece by piece. The ruins of New York were the battlefield. Skyscrapers stood like broken teeth against the gray sky, their shattered frames still smoldering from orbital strikes. Rubble choked the streets and rivers of ash flowed where water once ran. Humanity's largest city had become a graveyard, and it was here the war would end, one way or another. The Scythar Empress descended. She was colossal, 3 stories tall, her wings veined with black fire, her scales glistening with oily sheen. A crown of writhing worms pulsed on her skull, feeding on her flesh, and in her claws she held a blade carved from the bones of extinct beasts. Each step cracked concrete. Each breath carried the stench of rot. Around her, the remnants of the human army dug into the ruins. Tanks repurposed from museum relics fired shells into her guard. Fighters screamed through the smoke, strafing with missiles. Infantry poured plasma into the swarms of lesser Scythar that poured from tunnels and dropships. The air was a storm of noise and flame. Marcus staggered forward through the chaos, the crown searing brighter than ever. His veins glowed like molten gold. He no longer commanded armies with maps or comms. He felt them. Every heartbeat of a soldier, every cry of fear, every bullet fired, they pulsed inside him. Earth's fury filled him, but so did its pain. The planet bled through him, and he knew his body was breaking. The Empress's voice slashed through the battlefield, amplified by some foul resonance. "Earth crowns a farmer!" she hissed, her fangs glinting. "Your soil breeds weak kings." Marcus wiped blood from his lips. His body trembled, yet his gaze never wavered. "I'm not here to be a king. I'm here to stop you." Her laughter rattled glass still clinging to ruined towers. Then she struck. The Empress moved with speed unnatural for her size, her bone blade cleaving through a tank as if it were made of paper. Soldiers were scattered like insects, their screams drowned by her roar. Marcus answered. The ground convulsed, rising in jagged spears of steel and concrete. Entire buildings twisted into barricades, shielding human survivors. The clash shook the city. Every swing of her blade collapsed walls. Every strike of Marcus's will turned streets into rivers of molten stone. They were gods tearing a world apart, and humanity fought desperately in their shadows. The Empress lunged, claws closing around Marcus. He caught her strike with both arms, muscles snapping, blood spraying from his mouth. With a roar, he forced her back, stone pillars erupting from beneath her to drive her into the ground. But she laughed even as her body was crushed, wings beating, breaking free. "You cannot outlast me," she snarled. "Your crown feeds on you. I will watch you burn yourself empty." Marcus didn't deny it. His vision swam. The crown's roots dug deeper, threading into his skull, whispering promises of unstoppable power if he surrendered the last shreds of his humanity. His chest burned with every breath. But when he looked past her, he saw humanity still fighting, soldiers hauling wounded comrades through smoke, a child clutching her mother's hand inside a crumbling subway station, Ortiz standing tall on a rooftop, rifle glowing as she fired shot after shot into the alien swarms. If he failed here, they all died. He clenched his fists, forcing words through bloody teeth. "I don't need to outlast you. I just need to finish this." The earth itself answered. The rivers turned to steam, rising as boiling walls. Roots surged from beneath the asphalt, coiling like serpents. He directed them with one desperate command: feed. The ground opened under the Empress's feet. Roots lashed around her legs, burrowing into her scales. She screamed in fury, slicing dozens apart with her blade, but for every root severed, a dozen more wrapped tighter. Buildings collapsed as roots pulled steel beams into their grip, using the ruins themselves to bind her. She fought, wings thrashing, claws tearing, her roar shaking the heavens. But the earth was relentless. The roots dragged her deeper, deeper, until her colossal form was yanked into the molten core itself. Her final scream was an unholy shriek that echoed across the battlefield, silencing even the chaos of war. Then she was gone, swallowed whole by the planet. The sudden stillness felt like the eye of a storm. The alien swarms faltered, their roars turning to confusion. Leaderless, they broke ranks. Human forces surged, pressing the advantage, driving them back into the shadows. For the first time, the invaders retreated. Marcus collapsed amid the rubble. The crown split down the center, golden light flickering like dying embers. Blood streamed from his eyes and ears, and his breath rattled shallow. He had won, but every heartbeat felt like it might be his last. Ortiz reached him, dropping to her knees. Around them, soldiers and survivors cheered in exhausted disbelief. The Empress was gone. The city still stood. Humanity had endured. Marcus tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped. "It's done!" And in the silence that followed, the ruins of New York bore witness. One man, once a farmer, had dragged an empire to hell with nothing but a crown and the will to protect his people. Smoke still hung over New York like a funeral shroud. Fires burned unchecked in broken towers, and the air smelled of iron, ash, and victory. The Empress was gone, her shriek swallowed into Earth's core, and the Scythar swarms were scattering into the sky like panicked insects. Humanity had won a battle no one believed survivable. But Marcus lay in the ruins, the crown cracked and bleeding golden dust into the wind. His body looked more shadow than flesh, veins glowing faintly as though molten rock coursed inside him. Every breath rattled like a dying forge. Ortiz pressed her hand to his chest. "Stay with me, damn you," she whispered, her voice fraying. Soldiers formed a circle around them, weapons still raised, not against Marcus but to shield him, as if even in his broken state he were the heart of their defense. Marcus's eyes fluttered open. "Is it over?" Ortiz nodded, though tears streaked her soot-blackened face. "You dragged her to hell, Marcus." "She's gone. You did it." For a moment, the weight lifted from his chest, but the crown tightened, digging into his skull. Its voice was fainter now, yet still a hiss in his mind. "The earth is fed. The pact remains. The Emperor must endure, or the planet dies!" Marcus clenched his fists weakly. He could feel it. Earth itself tethered to him, its survival dependent on the bond the crown had forged. If he let go, the wound the Empress had left in the planet would fester. Humanity would live only to watch their world collapse. He realized the cost. The crown hadn't chosen him to win a battle. It had chosen him to carry the weight forever. Ortiz seemed to sense it. Her voice dropped, trembling. "What's it asking of you?" Marcus's lips curled in a faint, tired smile. "More than one man should give." His eyes drifted to the horizon where smoke thinned and rays of sunlight pierced through. Survivors were crawling out of bunkers, some cheering, others silent in shock. Children clung to parents. Soldiers, bruised and bloodied, stood straighter, staring at him as if he were the axis the world now spun upon. He remembered the day it began, just burying his dog, thinking life was small, ordinary, contained to soil and seed. Now he was soil and seed, root and flame. The earth itself had devoured the Empress, but it demanded a caretaker. With shaking hands, he reached up and tore the crown from his skull. Blood streamed down his face as golden light flared violently. The ground beneath them cracked, roots spasming as if panicked. Ortiz grabbed his wrist. "Marcus, don't... If you let go, the earth..." "I'm not letting go," he rasped. "I'm giving it me. Not a crown, not a throne. Just everything I am." And then he pressed the crown to his chest. Light exploded outward. The ruins lit up like dawn, breaking across every shattered window, every crater, every broken body. The roots that had bound the Empress surged again, this time not in rage but renewal. Green vines sprouted from rubble. Cracked asphalt split as blades of grass forced their way through. Streams of water gushed from fissures, clean and clear, washing away the ash. The crown dissolved into Marcus, threads of gold sinking into his veins until his body became a conduit. His eyes glowed brighter than the fires, his voice trembling as he whispered his last command, "Grow." And the earth obeyed. All around them, life burst where death had ruled. Burnt trees sprouted leaves. Crumbled towers bloomed with vines. Even the poisoned air cleared, swept away by sudden winds that smelled of rain and soil. Humanity watched, stunned, as their broken world healed in minutes what should have taken centuries. When the light faded, Marcus was gone. Only a hollow in the earth remained, roots curling over it like fingers closing gently around a seed. Ortiz fell to her knees, tears streaming, but she was not alone. Soldiers stood silent, heads bowed. Survivors whispered prayers, not of gods, but of the man who had given everything. A little girl stepped forward from the crowd, clutching a wilted flower. She placed it in the hollow. The roots shifted, cradling it, and from that spot a single tree began to grow, faster than any natural thing, its trunk thick, its branches wide, leaves shining with gold veins. It towered above the ruins, a living monument to sacrifice. From orbit, fleeing alien scouts watched in terror as Earth itself shimmered with new life, glowing faintly across its surface. A world that had been prey was now awake, alive, defended by roots deeper and stronger than any empire. Ortiz rose, voice carrying across the battlefield. "He's not gone. He is Earth now, and as long as we fight for it, he fights with us." The survivors roared, their voices echoing against the broken skyline, not in mourning, but in defiance. Humanity had no emperor, no throne, but they had something greater, a protector who had become the soil beneath their feet. And so the war shifted. The Scythar fled, their empires shaken, while humans rebuilt on ground sanctified by one man's choice. Every seed planted, every tree that grew, every stone lifted carried his memory. Marcus, the farmer who became Earth's crown, had proven a truth the galaxy would never forget. Humanity may break, but it never bows.